"Daddy's coming home today." She said it the way children say things they've been holding on to for too long, quietly, like a prayer she was afraid to say too loud. Nora Callahan, 7 years old, stood at the kitchen window in her yellow dress, watching the empty driveway like it owed her something. Her mother, Lee, stood behind her and said nothing, just rested one hand on Nora's shoulder. Some mornings, that was all either of them had. Sergeant First Class Desmond Callahan had been gone 31 months, 2 birthdays, 1 Christmas, 1 school play where Nora had saved the seat beside Lee and put a folded piece of paper on it that read "Dad" in careful crayon letters. Now he was finally coming home. The drive to the base took 40 minutes. Lee had ironed her blouse twice. Nora had brushed her hair 3 times and still had one stubborn curl escaping near her ear. They rode mostly in silence, the radio playing something low and unhurried, the morning light pale and soft across the highway. Lee gripped the wheel and thought about the version of Desmond who'd left. Steady, careful, the kind of man who folded his clothes before bed, and wondered quietly whether the man coming home would still fold his clothes. She pushed the thought away. She'd waited 31 months. She could wait 5 more minutes. The base arrival area was already filling when they pulled in. Families stood in loose clusters near the low metal fence. Children in good shoes, mothers with still hands and watchful eyes, a grandfather holding a handwritten sign with shaky block letters. Lee found a spot near the center. Nora pressed against the railing. And then a sound rose from the crowd, not cheering exactly, more like breathing, all releasing at once. The buses turned the corner. Nora went completely still. Lee put her arm around her daughter and didn't trust herself to speak. Soldiers came down in their pressed uniforms, bags on their shoulders, eyes scanning the crowd with that specific searching look, the one that only stops when it finds what it came home for. Desmond appeared in the door of the second bus. He looked older. There was no other word for it. Something in his posture was heavier, as if he'd been carrying weight that didn't fully leave when the pack came off. His eyes moved across the crowd and found Nora. She didn't run. She stood completely still, both hands on the railing, as if she was afraid that if she moved, he might disappear. He walked toward her, slowly. When he reached her, he crouched down to her level, right there on the pavement, and looked at her face for a long moment without saying anything. "You're taller," he finally said. His voice came out rough. Nora pressed her lips together. "You're the same." He pulled her into his arms. Lee pressed her hand against her mouth. Around them, the world kept moving. Buses, crowds, other reunions. But for one long moment, the 3 of them were the only still thing in it. It was in that stillness that Lee noticed something unusual. Off to the left, near the edge of the arrival area, stood an older man. He wasn't with any group. He had no sign. He wore a plain gray jacket and stood very quietly, watching the buses with an expression that was difficult to name, somewhere between hope and something that had learned to expect very little. He looked to be in his late 60s, white hair neatly kept, hands folded in front of him, patient as someone who had been waiting far longer than this morning. Lee watched him for a moment and then looked away. There were 100 small stories in a crowd like this. Desmond finally stood and put his arm around Lee, and the 3 of them turned toward the parking area. That was when Nora tugged his sleeve. "That old man is looking at you." Desmond turned. The older man hadn't moved, but his eyes, they were fixed on Desmond with an intensity that stopped everything. Desmond went very still. The bag slipped from his shoulder. Lee looked at him. "Desmond, what is it?" He didn't answer. He was already walking. The older man's name was Garland Callahan. He was 68 years old. He had driven 412 miles from a small town in eastern Tennessee, alone, in a car with a cracked dashboard, and a passenger seat holding a thermos of old coffee. He had not called ahead. He had not told anyone he was coming. He had only found out about the homecoming date 3 weeks earlier, through a cousin he barely knew anymore, who had mentioned it in passing, not realizing what it would mean. Garland and Desmond had not spoken in 11 years. It had begun the way many silences between fathers and sons begin, not with a single explosion, but with a series of smaller failures. Words not said, visits not made, a phone that rang and rang. Desmond had built his life in the distance between them, and for a long time he had told himself the distance was fine. But standing in a country far from home, in the specific darkness that comes at 3 in the morning, when sleep won't come, and the mind goes wherever it wants, Desmond had thought about his father more than he would ever admit. He had thought about the summer he was 12, when Garland had taught him to use a level on a fence post, explaining patiently that a thing built crooked will always lean. He'd thought about the way his father had shown up, uninvited, the day Desmond signed his enlistment papers, and hadn't said a single word against it, had only shaken his hand and held on a moment too long. He hadn't let himself think about what came after, about the years that quietly closed between them. Now Garland stood 3 feet away, and he looked smaller than Desmond remembered. Older in the way that 12 years will age a person when you haven't watched it happen gradually. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Garland's jaw worked silently. He looked at his son's face the way a man looks at something he was afraid he might never see again. "I didn't know if you'd want me here," he finally said. "I almost didn't come. I sat in the car for 20 minutes before I walked in." A pause. "I just needed to see that you were all right." Desmond looked at him. Something was happening in his face that Lee, watching from a few feet away, with Nora's hand in hers, couldn't fully read. Not anger, not joy, something older and harder than either. "You drove from Tennessee," Desmond said. "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." Desmond looked down at the pavement for a moment. When he looked back up, his eyes were bright. "You could have called," he said. His voice was rough again, but differently this time. "I know." Garland nodded slowly. "I should have called a long time ago." The silence between them had weight. It had 11 years of weight. But it wasn't hostile. It was the silence of two people standing at the edge of something, deciding whether to step across. Nora pulled free of Lee's hand, walked directly up to Garland, and looked up at him. "Are you my grandpa?" she asked. Garland looked down at her, startled. His eyes filled. Yes, he said, very quietly, "I think I am." "I didn't know I had one," Nora said simply. Garland made a sound that wasn't quite a word. He crouched down, slowly, one hand on his knee for balance, and looked at her small, serious face. "I'm sorry about that," he said. "That was my fault." Nora considered this with the frank seriousness of a 7-year-old. And then, because she was 7 and had been waiting all morning for something good to happen, she put her arms around his neck. Garland closed his eyes. Desmond watched his father hold his daughter, and something that had been pulled tight inside him for 11 years eased, not completely, not all at once, but enough to breathe around. He walked over and put his hand on his father's shoulder. Garland looked up. "Come on," Desmond said quietly. "We'll get some breakfast." It wasn't forgiveness exactly. Not yet. Forgiveness takes longer than a morning, but it was a door, open just enough to let some light through. And sometimes that is how it begins. They sat in a corner booth at a diner off the highway, 4 of them, which felt both strange and right. Nora colored a paper placemat with crayons the waitress had brought without being asked. Lee poured the coffee. Garland held his cup with both hands. At one point, Lee looked across at Desmond and said nothing. He reached over and covered her hand with his. Outside, the morning light had settled into something warm and steady. Nora held up her placemat. She had drawn 4 figures in a row. 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small, 1 old. "That's us," she said. Garland looked at the drawing for a long moment. Yes, he said softly, that's us. A soldier comes home carrying more than what he packed. He carries the weight of absence, the quiet cost of time, and all the words that didn't get said. But he also carries the possibility of return, not just to the people waiting at the gate, but to the parts of himself he left behind before he ever deployed. Sometimes the person waiting for you is the one you least expected, and sometimes that is exactly what makes it mean the most. Sometimes it's walking toward the person you've been walking away from, and staying. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.